Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the best rivals of Aether 2 player in the world. The game's been out for like, what, 4 to 5 months now at this point. We've had a handful of major events, and we can kind of glean what the top level of this game is looking like. Now, full disclosure, this conversation is really just between two people. I'm going to add a third person in there for content, but it's really just between two people. So for the majority of this video, what I'm instead going to do is I'm just going to talk about the best reps of every single character, because I haven't had a video where I've been able to highlight the competitive Rivals 2 scene yet. So that's what we're going to be doing. If you just care about the conversation for who that #1 spot is, I'll put a timestamp right here that you can skip to. Also, make sure that you use code ProofBlock in the item shop. I would really appreciate that. And let's get into it. First group of players I want to highlight are the Kragg players. So I'll give a shout out to ZB, Ion, Zeus, Frosty, and Cheesy Potato. But specifically, I want to highlight Ion and ZB because I feel like they have really taken the cake with this character, put him to that full extreme. The reason why people think Kragg is a fast character is because they see top level Kragg from Ion and ZB. And these guys are unbelievable with their movement, specifically ZB as well. He's one of the fastest players I've ever seen in any fighting game. It's just insane the amount of coverage that he has on a big body character like Kragg. I'm not trying to tell you that Kragg is slow, but he definitely does not normally move like that. And because Ion and ZB are so quick, they're just so smothering as well. Their advantage state is impossible to get away from it. It also helps that Kragg, again, has a very hard hitting advantage state. So you got these super slippery players hitting you incredibly hard. Of course, they're going to be finding a ton of success. And while I do think that a majority of Kragg players will start struggling just as the game progresses, I just think he's going to get worse over time. I would be pretty surprised if that happened to ZB and Ion. I would expect those guys to at least find success on another character, if not Kragg, just because the natural talent that they already have in the game is so obscenely high. I know a lot of people also think this way about Zeus as well. I just personally haven't really seen him play, so I can't really add as much to it. But ZB and Ion, two of the most fundamentally impressive players that I've seen. The way they move is just unbelievable. Next up is going to be Ranno, and our Ranno reps are going to be Luck, Mars, Leffen, Lucius, and Squanto. And I will say, unlike Kragg, there's no real clear rep of who the best Ranno player in the world is, because I would probably have Squanto as the frontrunner, him or maybe even Leffen, but we haven't seen either of those guys since LACS Rivals. The last time that we saw Luck was at, I believe, Flat Fight, where he did pretty well. He got 7th place there, and Mars and Lucius have been a little bit more active, and based off results, I would probably give it to Mars just because he's been to so many events and he's done well at literally every single Rivals event that he's been to. And Lucius has also done well, but he's been a little bit more up and down. So based off results, I would probably give it to Mars, but based off the eye test, it's really tough to tell because players like Leffen and Squanto would be my front runner for the character. I really, really like how they use him aggressively. Just their usage of back air and neutral air specifically, I think they are the best at least when I was watching them. Now, I always imagined that Ranno would be a very defensive character at the top level just because his whip punishing is so good because of his, like, obviously amazing speed and some of the tilts that he has, but also because darts is just an amazingly strong tool in combination with that. That hasn't really been the case with Ranno, but I do think if you start to see one of these 5 Ranno players, or just any Ranno player, start playing a little bit more defensively, go for a bait and punish style, you're going to find a lot of success with this character. Is it going to be any of these 5 Rannos? I can't really say, but I believe in all of them to pull it off. Really quickly, I just wanted to also mention that I think Ant should be on that list for some of the best Ranno players in the world. I've been pretty impressed whenever I see him. And if there's anyone throughout the course of this video that I think I left out, chances are I just didn't know they existed, or I just literally forgot about them, and not that I don't think they're good enough. So just leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to let you know what I think. And yeah, let's get back to it. Next up is going to be Maple, and the best Maple players, in my opinion, are Sinbad, Elkies, LPs, Plup, and I was also really impressed by Super Salty at Frosty Faustic, so I want to include them as well. And I would definitely say that Sinbad is the best Maple player in the world, just considering that he has by far the highest peak of the character, winning Luminosity Makes Big Moves, the first ever Rivals 2 tournament since the game actually came out. So obviously that's an amazing peak to have. And then after that, he's also got 9th place at Supernova, 9th place at I believe it was Flat Fight. So he's just done well at all of his events and has by far the highest peak of the character. And I think at the start of the game, Maple is going to be a very peaky character just because she relies a lot on tech chasing. She relies a lot on you getting your flowcharts correct against your opponent, and if you're on one day, you're going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to find a lot of success, but eventually that's just going to be every day for these Maple players. They're just going to have these flowcharts down. They're going to have these tech chase scenarios and how exactly they want to handle them down, and I can almost guarantee you that one Maple player is going to break away from the rest and just find so much more success because they're just going to figure out how to systematically do this before anyone else does. Now, is it going to be any of these 5 Maple players? honestly probably going to be one of them. And if I had to guess which one of them it's going to be, it's probably going to be Sinbad. He's just had such an insane peak already that I expect him to be able to match it again. But I actually believe in all 5 of these Mabel players to be able to get to that point, even to like a top 10 point, because if you take this character to the max, you are going to be able to do insane things. She just has the best tech chasing in the game. In theory, you never escape that tech chasing from her. And these are guys that can absolutely capitalize on it. They haven't quite yet, but big emphasis on that yet. Next up is going to be Wrastor, and your best Wrastor players are going to be Mr. R, BioBurb, Apple Wiz, and Marlon. Now, Marlon is the best Wrastor player. Okay, whatever. Let's talk about the other ones. You're going to have BioBurb, I think, as the second front runner for that character. I've been very impressed by his play. I really like how he uses up B specifically. He's just so aggressive. The Apple Wiz as well, I also think does a great job of that. They just pull the trigger on that button. And because of that, I think they find a lot of success just getting those really early kills as Wrastor, because up B is a move that is very easy to set up into as Wrastor. Like, yeah, you can go for your guaranteed follow-ups, or go for your guaranteed tech chase, and again, a nice punish at like 120. Or you could forward air someone off stage and then try to kill them at 70% by doing a B reverse up B. Like, this character has a lot of aggressive potential, and I feel like Apple Wiz and BioBurb are really good at exploiting that. And you also got to give credit to Mr. R. I unfortunately just literally have not been able to watch him play because he's been in Europe for the majority of this. He hasn't been able to play, but he's fundamentally a very solid player. I think if he was with other people like near to his skill level, he would be one of the best, like probably already is, one of the best Wrastor players in the world. And I really hope that he gets an opportunity to prove himself in 2025 for Rivals, just because I think he could be like one of the front runners for this game. But yeah, Marlon is definitely the best Wrastor because he's just like really good at the game. But these other Wrastors are also doing really good, and they've been stepping it up lately. Next up is going to be Orcane. I've only got Marlon. I actually could not name a single other Orcane player who has been consistent enough to actually be considered a top-level player. So it's just Marlon. If you have one, please let me know down below. And even if you don't have one, even if you just think you're really good at Orcane and want to shout, like, the standard is really low with this character. But Marlon has had some pretty good success whenever he does use it. We saw it at Frosty Fausting, and he's just so good in those scrapping positions, just getting value out of that Orcane Nair and his tilts as well. And the timing for his F tilt are so amazing. Like, he is always getting the maximum damage out of combo and then sending people away with the F tilt. He's never pulling it too early, and I think that's like really the thing that you have to give the credit to for Marlon, is just his damage output is so optimized on his characters. He's so fast as well, and the combination of those two just makes it that when you get hit once, you just literally never escape that disadvantage state, even when he's on a character like Orcane. So shouts to Marlon for being really good at the fish. I don't know any other ones. Next up is going to be Zetterburn, and our best Zetter players are Switch, Grompy, Cody Schwab, Beastly, and Stango. And I definitely should have gave Stango a shout out for Kragg player as well. I just kind of forgot that he had a Kragg secondary. Same thing for BioBurb. And honestly, Stango's more of a co-main at this point. He's getting value out of Kragg and Zetterburn at pretty much every single tournament that he's showing up to, just using them in his preferred matchup. And because of that, he's found a lot of success in tournament, and he probably has the best results of any Kragg player or any Zetterburn player. But I don't think that he is the best Zetterburn player. I still think that the best Zetterburn player is going to be Switch. He has been so consistent. Every single event that this guy has showed up to, he's literally gotten top 8 at every single Rivals 2 event that he has been to. That is the sign of a top player right there. It's just fundamentally very strong. His pressure with Shine is like obviously good, but his pressure outside of Shine is where he really takes the cake, just moving around that character, making them pick the incorrect option so he's able to capitalize off it. I really want to give big shout out to Grompy as well. I just haven't really seen Grompy play at all, but the one time that I did see him play, it was like actual magic. So hopefully we get to see more Grompy play, and hopefully we get to see, honestly, all of these guys play more. Cody Schwab also had an amazing event that he ended up winning. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but he played exceptionally well. They're definitely a guy to keep your eye on. He's going to be one of the top players in Melee, so fundamentally he's got those skills down. Absolutely knows how to compete at the top level. There's a lot of very good Zetterburn players that are all kind of in the conversation for that number one, could all steal it away from each other, but I would give it to Switch right now because he's just showed up every time and he's performed. Really quickly, I just wanted to show you all some of the results that I was just talking about. You had Cody Schwab winning Afterburner 2025 over Raven King, YXL, and Anakin Skinwalker, who are two very good Zetters that I didn't mention, so shout out to those guys as well. Also, shout out to Raven King. You're going to have Stango. He's got second place at Supernova, but he does go all Kragg there. Second place at Platfoy, and then a fifth place at Luminosity makes big moves. So he's got a higher high, but it does happen with Kragg. And then for Switch, as you can see, it's just like so consistent from this guy, literally top 8ing every single event that he goes to. Now, he doesn't have too many podium finishes at like the major events, but he literally, oh, my webcam's kind of blocking it. As you can see, he literally just like does not have any bad placements. He has been unbelievable, and that's why I regard him as the best one right now. Next up is going to be Forseburn, and your best Forseburn players are going to be Cake Assault, Void, Zac, and Pikmon. And Cake Assault's the best one, I mean, obviously. But I think something that's really interesting about Forseburn is that you're able to play this character in a lot of very different styles. Like the way Cake Assault plays it, for example, he uses back air a ton. That is like his main neutral tool. He gets a ton of value out of it just as this heat check tool. Are you running in on me? No, you're not. You're getting hit with the back air, and he gets a lot of value out of it. You go to someone like Pikmon, who, at least the last time I saw him play, maybe he changes up a little bit, but he was getting a ton of value out of down. He was going for it whenever he could, just so he had that full charge, and once people got sent off stage, he was just immediately ripping that, trying to get those early stocks, and he was getting lots of value out of it, in the contrast to someone like Void, who never even elects to go for down, but he just likes to have smoke on the ground so he can use it for deception, have neutral be a little bit stronger, and even just little things like how do these players use Nair differently, because some of them elect to go for Nair 1, Nair 2, or Nair 3, and all of these things matter for Forseburn. He's such an intricate character, and because of that, I think it's a little bit tough to compare these Forseburn players. We don't have a ton of results. Like, again, obviously Cake Assault is the best one, but if I had to say who the second best one is, I would probably say that it's Pikmon. I really like how he uses down B, just getting immediate value out of that. And again, he's ripping it as soon as he can, so it's not like he's just waiting around with down B for like 30 seconds, not having smoke in the neutral. He's still applying smoke, but he is also just using that explosive potential. So I would say that Pikmon is probably the second best Forseburn, and then it's Cake Assault. I mean, duh. Next up is going to be Edalis. Next up is going to be Clairen, and your top Clairen players are going to be Boyko, Spargo, and Ron Gunshoe. And I think Spargo is the best person who plays Clairen right now, if that makes sense, because when I watched him play at LMBM, he was unbelievable. Just fundamentally, he was a lot better than most of his opponents. He wasn't feeling the pressure that they were. His decision-making was always good. He was just forcing the opponents into situations that they really didn't want to be. And on top of all of that, his spacing is just like some of the best, if not the best in the world, just because like fundamentally as a player, he just really good at that. Smash Cloud, I guess, does do a little bit of help in the real world, but I don't think his Clairen specifically was that good, if that makes any sense. Like, it just looked like he fundamentally was better than most of his opponents. Kind of how I was talking about earlier with Marlon and Orcane. It just looked like Marlon is better than most people he's playing against. It doesn't look like Orcane is necessarily a great character. When I look at Ron Gunshoe play, he looks like the best Clairen player in the world. Just the stuff that he is doing, the optimized routes that he is taking. I think he is playing the character the closest to correct that you could right now. But I think Spargo undeniably just is going to be the best Clairen player in the world. If he continues to invest into this game, the stuff that we saw from LMBM, yeah, he's just going to figure out those stuff as well. His flow charting is going to get better. He's going to know the optimized routes more and more. And even without the optimized routes, he was already like absolutely cooking people. Maybe it was just a one-off event and he actually looked amazing in LBM and he won't after that, but honestly, I highly doubt it's the case. I think Spargo has nowhere to go but up. He is very, very good. Also, I didn't talk about Boyko at all in the segment, I realized, but Boyko's also insane. You got to give that guy credit too. Next up is going to be Loxodont, and we've only got two Loxodont players, then being Evil Nardwuar and Nog, and I would say that Nog is definitely the best Loxodont player in the world because of that amazing run that he had at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami. I don't think that run is ever going to be beaten by another Loxodont player, and it's a little bit of hate towards the Loxodont players, like a little bit of hate, but it's mainly just giving credit towards Nog and how unbelievable that run actually is, winning, I think, like 7 sets in a row in the loser side to get all the way to second place. Some unwinnable matchups in there that he had to conquer as well. So really impressed by Nog in that run. Obviously, that's going to cement him as the best Loxodont player in the world. And I think the main thing that you got to give credit for Evil Nardwuar and Nog to is just how brazen these guys are. They do not care if they are taking a risk. They know they're taking a risk, but they just assume that they are going to be right. And when they are right, oh boy, is it bad for the opponent. These guys' walling is incredible. Now, obviously, they still face those exact same problems. If they get hit as Loxodont, they're getting hit as Loxodont, and that's why I think you really haven't had a lot of Loxodont players finding success with the character. But if anyone were to continue doing so, it will be the ones that are the best with his aggression, and that's definitely where you got to give credit to Evil Nardwuar and Nog. These guys are insane when it comes to pressing the button. And our final character is going to be Fleet, and the best Fleet players in the world are going to be Cake Assault, Mystery Soul, and B-Bats. And obviously, Cake Assault is going to be the best Fleet player. He's the best player in the world. Well, he may be the best player in the world. No spoilers. We'll get into that in just a second. But I do want to give credit to Mystery Soul for being the second best Fleet player in the world. The way that this guy moves with B is undisputed the best out of any of the fleet players. He just has so much control over that move, using it for constant ledge cancel, then like immediately floating out of it with like a back air, or not doing a float out of it, just immediately going for like a grab out of it. Like his pressure and mix up out of these uppies, and just the rate that he does them at, and the success that he does them at, more importantly, is so impressive to me. And obviously something that you got to give a compliment to for all of the fleet players is just going to be their general flowchart, and that's just kind of how you have success with that character. And I think the fleet players are starting to really figure that out in these past couple events. Okay, how is this character going to tend to recover? What angles do I need to like just stop them from getting to? And I think that VBATS and Mystery Soul are going to be your front runners for that. Cake Assault, I don't think will be a front runner for that, just because he's going to be putting more of his time into Forseburn. And I think in order to like learn how to consistently flowchart people, you just need to be putting time in. Like, he of course still could do it, but I expect Mystery Soul and VBATS to be like really, really good because their flowcharting just gets insane. And I expect Cake Assault to be really, really good because he's really, really good. And it is finally time to talk about the reason that you clicked on this video. Who is the best Rivals of Aether 2 player in the world? And as I mentioned at the start, it's really just between two people, but I do want to throw a third person in the conversation, because even if they aren't in contention right now, they will be very soon, and that is, of course, going to be Spargo. If you've watched his run at LMBM, you know exactly what I am talking about. Fundamentally, he was just better than, like, every single person that he was facing off against, and he was so good spacing-wise. He was always getting these, like, optimized combos, but, in fact, they weren't optimized combos. They were very unoptimized combos. He was just doing the most basic Clairen stuff, but all of it was perfectly spaced, so it just looked like he was absolutely insane. I think what you're going to see from Spargo at Genesis is someone who actually knows how to play Clairen at this point. He is very comfortable with this character. He knows the intricate combo routes, and his spacing is still going to be a lot better. His movement is also going to be significantly better. Again, if you go back to watch LMBM, yeah, he was wave dashing a little bit, but nowhere near as much as someone like Z or Marlon. Spargo is one of the fastest players in Smash Ultimate. I have no doubt that he will also be one of the fastest players in Rivals 2 once he figures out that mechanic a little bit more. And he might have already figured it out. Again, when we saw him in LMBM, that was like with him having like 2 weeks of practice under his belt, just picking up the game. Now he's got like 2 months of practice under his belt. And it's still a lot less than everyone else, but he's already a lot better than everyone else. So I really truly believe that if Spargo wants to become the best Rivals 2 player in the world, he will become the best Rivals 2 player in the world. His performance at Genesis is definitely going to matter for his mental, but I got a lot in faith in him to do great things in this game. He is just so good. That spacing is... So who is the best Rivals of Aether 2 player in the world? And if you wanted the answer to the question of like who is it right now, then you give it to Cake Assault, because he's actually been able to compete and he's just won every single event that he's gone to. But who is going to be the best Rivals of Aether 2 player is really what I care about asking, like in the middle of that 2025 season and the end of that 2025 season, who is going to be looking like the best. And it's between Cake Assault and Marlon. And I also think that character choice really doesn't matter here. And normally I do for best player in the world, just because if you're the best player in the world, you have to be able to beat the meta at every single tournament that you show up to. And I think in general, Rivals 2 is a game where you can pretty much succeed with any character, but especially since Cake Assault and Marlon are both going to have secondaries in the Orcane and the Fleet, I really think that they are just going to be very successful whatever the meta throws at them. So it's going to come down to kind of how they face off against each other, in my opinion, and I do think that Marlon has a slight advantage there. And the main reason for that is going to be Marlon's speed. This is the fastest player that I have ever seen in Rivals of Aether 2. And I know that Frosty Fausting is a really small sample size, and I don't think the average level of play was like super high at that event. I don't think any top 10 players were in attendance, so of course he's going to look extremely dominant in those sets. But the point still stands that he was moving around this stage. You never know where he was going to end up, and he's constantly moving as well. So you don't actually know if he's approaching, if he's like disengaging, if he's just moving around on the platform, having a blast by himself. It is so tough to track this guy's movement. And because of that, I think Cake Assault is going to have a very tough time with him, because the main thing that I value as Cake Assault as a player is fundamentally, he just gets the tempo of his opponents down immediately. Like, it is so fast. He understands your timing, when you want to commit, when you want to disengage. And I think that's why he lands so many back airs, to be honest, because it's a very slow, heavy hitting move. But if he knows exactly when you're going to jump and exactly when you want to take that wave land in, it's going to be pretty easy for him to hit that. So because of that, I think that's why Cake Assault has found so much success. He's able to read his opponents, get into their head, see what option they want to pick next. I think that's going to be really hard to do with Marlon. By the way, I'm not saying that Marlon is just brain off, pressing a million buttons per second and just overwhelming his opponents. No, of course he's still reading in them. He's picking up on habits. He's noticing how they escape a situation A. So if situation A happens again, you set up into situation B. but I don't think that's why he's going to be the best player in the world. I think he's going to be the best player in the world because mechanically he is going to steamroll like 95% of the competition. And then when it gets to the competition that he just can't steamroll mechanically, I think fundamentally his brain up there is still very solid. Decision making is very fast. I mean, it has to be for a guy that moves like that. And I do believe that when it comes to him playing off against Cake Assault, he is going to come out on the top. One last thing that I will give to Cake Assault, though, is Cake Assault obviously has experience under his belt. He shouldn't really feel as much pressure there, but I honestly don't think that experience or pressure is going to be that big of a factor for Marlon. Feels like a guy that really doesn't care too much, roll on his shoulders, wouldn't even give a damn. So I think Marlon is going to be your best player in the world for Rivals of Aether 2 going into 2025. But I'm very curious what y'all think. Leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video, it would mean a whole lot if you sub. Put creator code ProofBlock in the shop as well. That would also mean a ton. And yeah, that's all I got to say. I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.